So welcome to the Cloud Design Box podcast. Today I'm here with Rachel Howarth, who is Vice Principal at Bradford Girls Grammar School, and she's a business studies teacher. Hi, Rachel.
Hello.
So thanks for joining us today. Can I ask, first of all, has ICT always been something that you've used a lot as teachers at the school?
No, we've been quite restrained or constrained really in the past due to lack of access, and we've had fixed ICT suites, so members of staff had to book in if they wanted to use ICT. So although our teachers were ICT literate, a lot of their lessons were very traditional based and wasn't a lot of student use of ICT before lockdown.
Okay, and you've been using Class Notebook a bit though, within teams, I gather, within class teams. How's that working out for you?
Yeah, we've been using Class Notebook since September. Before that, we were using SharePoint a lot more, and then developed onto using Teams for assignments in the summer term. So our staff were learning how to use Teams from about May onwards to make the interaction between teachers and pupils more efficient, but also to save a bit of time. But since September, since the government have had the requirement for anyone who is absent from school to have immediate access to remote learning, we decided that in order to save teachers' times, it would be better if we could plan our lessons using Class Notebook, use them in the lesson if we could as resources, share them with other people for cover lessons, cover purposes, and also have those available to students if they're not in school, whether they're self-isolating or absent for any other reason. And it's working really well.
Great. So you're kind of using the tools like Class Notebook for blended learning, and it almost doesn't matter if the students are in the classroom doing it or whether they're at home on their own doing it. It's the same resources.
That's correct, and because they can all access it, they really like that because they can go back and revise from the resources that are still there in the Class Notebook. So if there are any videos there, for example, they can go back and re-listen to the content, and it helps them to consolidate the learning that they've got in the class.
Brilliant. Are you able to show us some of what you've been doing in the Class Notebook? Obviously, we can't show any student information, so you won't be able to see the individual sections that students are working on, but perhaps some of the sections that you've used for teacher content.
Yes, I can do that. So here I've got an example of a Year 13 business page that I've created, and you can see that there's reference to the lesson when it was taught, and the resources, some instructions, and sometimes if we create a video of the lesson, there wouldn't be as many instructions written down because they would be actually being spoken by the teacher. But you can see we can put on reference to who to contact if you need some attention, and because they're in the sixth form, we've said if you'd like a Teams meeting instead, you can make a request in the post section of the team. I think we're finding students are using posts more often now, but they do still sometimes email us if they've got an issue. We've got lots of links. I've got a link to the specification, an audio recording, so I just recorded me describing how the lesson fit into the rest of the A-level business studies course. And then there are some YouTube videos here that we were using to refresh students' memory of some of the work that they were learning during lockdown.
Okay, because there's been quite a bit of discussion about whether you should put files and videos and things inside OneNote pages because they could weigh the notebook down. But these are YouTube videos which are kind of linked to, I guess. So is that an issue?
No, it's not an issue at all. If you're actually linking to YouTube videos, all you need to do is insert the link and the video plays within the notebook page, but it's not actually embedded in the page. It's just the link that's there. So if you're creating your own video, so for example, I might have a PowerPoint presentation, I would save that into the resources. So there's a link to SharePoint here. and I would make I would copy the link, so you're not actually embedding any video into the page. So the resources may be actually in SharePoint, but when you copy the link onto the page and click on it, it opens the video that you might have created.
Right. So you've saved all your actual resources in kind of a centralized resource bank for each subject, and then you can just reference to that rather than having to actually embed those objects again each time.
That's right, and it saves a lot of time because you are just clicking on the link. You're not actually embedding anything. And we use assignments for homework as well in the same way, so we don't confuse the two. The students use the file area to upload their work that they create during class time, so that the teacher can check. They don't have to mark everything, but you can actually check that the work has been completed. And we sometimes make use of forms to ask questions, so low stakes quizzing really to check content knowledge. That's also saves a lot of time.
Great. So you've really separated out the classwork from things like homework and project work?
Yes, and that means that, and we make it very clear to teachers that they're not expected to mark everything that's coming in, because clearly a lot of the work that's completed in a normal classroom situation wouldn't be marked. And so if you've got a large number of students who are at home, you shouldn't be marking that work that's been produced in class, but at least you can go in and have a look and check that, one, it's been done, and two, you may want to then contact the student and have a conversation if you feel that the work isn't of the right standard or there's some misunderstanding, but it's at least you can check that it's there, but there isn't the expectation to mark it. But the assignments part of Teams is really useful for homework, and we use the grades part is also useful because that's actually almost like an electronic mark book if you use the points for each assignment that you've set.
Great. So you've got the files area where students have their own files. I know you can't show us those today because it's kids' names. And that's where they do the classwork. And it's kind of a little bit like in a real class, I guess, where the teacher would just walk around the classroom, having a look over kids' shoulders and just making sure they're on track. And coming back and doing some different teaching if you realise it's gone off in the wrong direction.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And then comparing that to the assignments, which are much more kind of formal, and there's going to be a mark behind it, and the students will receive that grade and some comments.
Yes, and it's easy to just enter the comments and return to the students electronically, and they get them immediately. You know, they get immediate feedback as soon as you've marked them. And it also gets around a lot of the issues with COVID-19 of not touching resources and quarantining paper, etc.
So how do you use the class notebook compared to things like the assignments, or just having kids doing work in the files tab? Do students do work a lot in the class notebooks, or is it mainly those kind of teacher-based areas where you're putting together the lesson plans and letting kids know what they've missed?
It's mainly the teacher areas for now. I think the students will use them more. They certainly upload files for that when they're absent from school for us to have a look at, and they use the assignments part prolifically, but they're not using the class notebook as much at the moment. But we've only just really started using it, and I think we're coming on leaps and bounds, and we're already finding ways to actually save time. So our lessons are created in OneNote notebook in SharePoint, and then they can be distributed out to different class notebooks by different teachers. So we're sharing resources and reducing teacher workload.
Great. So it's not a case of individual teachers creating all the content in their own class notebooks. You've got like a central notebook, and then the teachers can copy and paste from that or distribute from that.
Yes, they can do either that or they can still create in class notebook, but we advise departments to actually create in the OneNote notebook in SharePoint, and then you can distribute out using the OneNote app. If you sync it, you can actually move pages from one file to one notebook to another one on Teams. So it does save a lot of time. And if it's in SharePoint, if we then have cover supervisors with us, with the students, they can then still access the lesson material from SharePoint. They don't have to go into the team because they're not a team member, but they can still see the work. So it does save a lot of time.
Because that can be a problem. This question of, you know, we've got some learning support officers. Should we be adding them into all the class teams in case they need to get in and see some content? But from what you're saying, it doesn't matter, because as long as they've got access to those centralized subject areas, they can see all the work that they need, and cover teachers as well, I guess, can see the work.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So as long as the notebook is sitting inside the staff resources page where all staff can access, then there shouldn't be a problem at all.
Because I guess a lot of people don't know that a OneNote notebook exists as a thing on its own. A lot of people think it has to be a class notebook of some kind, you know, because it's a special thing for education. But actually, they're just documents, I guess, like Word documents or PowerPoints. It's just a document.
That's right, and I didn't even realise there was an option to do that until I started looking a bit deeper into Class Notebook, and particularly as we were working upon teething problems, if you like, with Class Notebook. I then discovered, and after talking to yourselves, that you could actually create a new one in SharePoint, and that's resolved a lot of our issues. Brilliant. Just like you can open a new Word document, for example.
And how are your colleagues getting on with that change of the idea of centralized resources, whether that's in the SharePoint sites or in the notebook within the subject areas? How does that feel to them compared to just doing it themselves in their own class team?
Oh, I think they really appreciate it, because it means that teams of teachers can share resources, and that it isn't down to you as an individual creating everything and it all being duplicated for different class sets, for example. Yeah, no, I think they really appreciate that.
That's great. It's certainly a good way to save teacher time. And do you find that's helped with driving up quality as well? Because of course you look after, you know, the whole curriculum in your role.
Yes, because it enables middle to be able to see the quality of the work that's being produced as well, and make sure that there's some standardization across different subject areas, because they've got access to the OneNote notebooks. They can see what's been actually put on to the different class notebooks, and they don't have to be part of the team.
Brilliant. How do your students get on with it? Do they like doing it this way?
I think they got used to using assignments very quickly, a little bit of resistance to change, but we're in quite a deprived area of the country, and our main problem has been that the students haven't all had devices for learning, and so we've been simultaneously lending out our spare devices and also taking part of the government scheme to make sure that the disadvantaged pupils all have access to ICT, and they are moving forwards at a very fast pace, as students generally do, in terms of using the technology that's there to be able to respond. And even the students who perhaps only had a mobile phone to begin with were still managing to upload their work to assignments by taking a picture of it and uploading that way. So we've done a lot of training with students and staff, and most latterly, before we've lent out laptops, we did a lot of training on using Teams with the mobile phone, and so that's been useful for the students, being able to actually access things on the phone if they can't actually access it any other way.
Brilliant. It sounds like you've come a long way in a short time. What challenges do you think you're going to need to get over in the near future to get this working optimally?
I think we need to have another look at how students can use Class Notebook. We just need staff and keep answering their questions and trying to find out the question, because the more people use it, the more not issues they find with it, but areas in which they feel that they might be able to make an improvement. And so we then need to train ourselves to find out the answer and be able to make things work a bit more smoothly. And I think certainly if we had another lockdown, then live teaching would be a challenge for us, although we are now much better at using, for us as a staff team, much better at using Microsoft Teams meetings, for example, and we've then progressed on from that, creating videos just in the way that I just showed you before.
Great. How do you find the mix of activities in the Teams meetings and in those lessons? Do you tend to do a whole 1 hour lesson with the kids and kind of keep it open all the time, or do you dip in and out of the meeting and get the kids to do some work in the background and then come back to you?
Well, we've only used Teams meetings within the staff for now. Our issue with live teaching would be that even though we may have got devices to all our students, a large number of them are sharing devices, so they wouldn't necessarily be able to access live teaching at the timetabled time. So that's why we've been using Class Notebook as prolifically as we have been doing, because it allows people to access on demand live.
And those recordings of the lessons that you showed us as well, I guess that would help with that, because the kids can go in whenever they need to.
I think moving forward, we were looking to be using something like the virtual drop-in meeting to allow students from all classes to be able to have access weekly, at least once, to the teachers, so that they could ask questions face to face as well, but at different times of the day, so that every student should be able to speak to a teacher at least once a week.
Yeah. Well, Rachel, thanks for taking the time to speak to us today. We're looking forward to having you back in the near future to tell us how this works out for you over the next couple of weeks and months. So thanks very much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.